And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Laraib. And we are also joined by two of our best friends, Lucas in the bottom left and Jack right below me. Super excited to have these guys. We are going to be doing a lot this Super Bowl week. Today's episode will be focused on the betting markets. We're talking everything, props, all the lines, everything to do with this Super Bowl game, last game of the year, a fitting end to an awesome season. We have so much to get into today. Laraib, is there anything you want to say before we hop into this jam-packed episode?
Well, we got two of the best sports bettors in all of Louisiana here with us, Lucas Colgrove and Jack Schwartz. Why don't you guys just go ahead and quickly introduce yourselves before we hop right into it?
Well, hey guys, I'm
Jack.
Jack. I'm Jack. I'm excited to be here. I have a few things that I like to see for this game, and we'll see how they go.
Lucas?
All right. My name's Lucas. I'm a long time supporter of the First and Goal podcast. I have a couple Vegas insiders that have given me a scoop on what to expect for the game, and I'm happy to share my intel with the fans.
All right, well, we are super excited to have you both on. You two have been clamoring to get on the podcast. It's not your turn, it's your opportunity, as we like to say in this podcast. All right, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. We will start with the line for the game. The San Francisco 49ers are 2.5-point favorites, obviously neutral site in Las Vegas. Fans really have no impact on a Super Bowl because they get priced out every year and it's getting more and more egregious, especially because it's in Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps. 2.5-point line. First initial reaction, Laura, to seeing the 49ers favored, I think it just came out at 2.5. I don't think there's been much movement since. The majority, I think the Chiefs money line has been bet 5 times more just because of the value. I mean, most casual fans see Mahomes as an underdog, and they're like, yes, please give me that money. Do you think this is a fair line, or what's your take on it?
No, I think the Chiefs should be favored in this game. For this game to be at 2.5 against the 49ers defense, which has really struggled in the past couple of weeks, and Mahomes, which just shown that he's been an unstoppable force so far in these playoffs, really questionable. But of course, Vegas always knows something is up. And so this 2.5, it's been fluctuating up and down. We've seen it at 1.5. But here on Tuesday, sitting at a nice 2.5. And I really like Chiefs points.
All right, Lucas, 2.5 Niners. What do you think?
So the Niners are favored to win the game.
Yes, they are favored slightly.
I think this game is going to come down to the stars. And I just don't know if I trust Brock Purdy yet. I was a big supporter of him at first, but after witnessing what Mahomes has done recently, I think you got to trust Mahomes and you got to favor the Chiefs in this game. I think Vegas has this one wrong.
Yeah, and then Jack, before I swing this to you, I want to say it felt kind of weird, after what we saw Mahomes and the Chiefs do, go on the road in 2 straight games. And yes, the first playoff game against Miami was also impressive, but to go to Buffalo and to Baltimore and play as impressively as they did on both sides of the ball. And then you juxtapose that with what the 49ers looked like in their matchups against the Lions and the Packers, where they kind of looked shaky in both games. They were trailing in both second halves. They did end up winning, but for this to come out as a 2.5-point lead or spread is a shock. Do you think this is maybe the betting markets just saying 49ers were better all season long? They looked more impressive. We're going to stick to what we thought of this matchup as the season progressed? Or do you think they didn't, I don't know, adjust enough to what we saw in the playoffs?
So I think that the 49ers have had a tough couple weeks in the playoffs. They did have a 2-week break with having the first seed, and they came out a little slow, a little sluggish against teams that obviously they're better than. And all season they've been really good. Playoffs, they had the 2-week break, and with the slow start, they didn't really have that much time to recoup and get back to where they are. And I think with these 2 weeks, they're going to be able to get back to their position and really come out, hopefully firing. And I think that Vegas actually has this one right, and it's going to be a close game no matter what. I think defense actually is going to be a bigger part of the game when there's such high-powered offenses. I think the defenses might step up. Both of these
Yeah,
teams are pretty good.
and that's going to
And
bring me to the line itself. 47.5 points for this game. You know, in the last 5 Super Bowls, the under has hit every time except for last year, 38-35. Obviously, 73 points combined in the Super Bowl blew out the over-under from last season. The way a lot of this is how you think the game is going to go. And everyone has a game script in their head for how would this team like to win. And Laraib, it feels like how both of these teams ideally would like this game to play out is they would like a heavy run attack, play with a lead, and manage the game. So what do you think about 47.5?
It's a really interesting line because you think in your head, even if this game is going to be really close in the first half, these teams just come out swinging in the third quarter and a late drive in the fourth quarter could easily have these teams at 24-24 and someone's going down the field to kick a game-winning drive, right? But then you think about this Chiefs team earlier, it's really been their defense that's held up in the second half and stop opposing teams from scoring. We look at the Ravens from last week in a game that totaled 37 points. You go back to the Buffalo game where they held Josh Allen in that last drive. So this is a really tough line to balance here, but I'm going to go ahead and take the over. I think, as much as these teams really like to play defense, at some point it's going to come down to a Mahomian effort or a Brock Purdy drive with George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey to go on a game-winning drive, and I think it will push us over the points.
All right, Lucas.
Yeah, so like you said, they want to both teams are going to want to establish the run in this one. Kind of try to get up early and try to play from ahead and hold on to the lead, manage the clock. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is actually going to be a pretty high-scoring game. This is the Super Bowl, for Christ's sake. I want to see the playmakers show up on both sides. I want to see McCaffrey do his thing. I want to see Debo do his thing. I want to see KELCE. Guys like Rashee Rice have stepped up as of recently. Pacheco's been great on the ball, pounding the turf, as you would say. So I'm actually going to take the over on the points.
Yeah, and Jack, Lucas brought up a good point because when you think about these two coaches, Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, you give them an extra week to prepare for an opponent. Ideally, you would think that the offenses would shine in a matchup like this, but 47.5 is a pretty run-of-the-mill line given the superstars on both of these offenses. So it ultimately comes down to how this game is going to turn out. If this game starts fast, it's going to end fast. If this game starts slow, both teams are going to want to risk manage. What we've seen, Brock Purdy, don't want to, overutilize him, make him prone to a mistake. And we've seen Mahomes with a lead. He plays very conservative, leaning on the run. So do you see a similar script? Just however this game goes, it's going to go full throttle.
I don't think, or I think it's going to go one way or the other. I think that whoever gets the lead early, especially if they can get a 2-score lead early, like 10-0, they're going to try to bleed that clock. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be a lot of slow pace, gritty, up the middle runs. Defense is going to try to push them back, and it's going to be wearing down the defenses, which could eventually get towards that over. But I think that this game actually is going to go under. When you look at the 49ers, besides the playoffs, the only two teams that have gone over 20 points were the Rams, who did it twice, and the Cardinals. Both of those are divisional rivals, and those are tough games. So I can see a world where they give up more than that to a stacked Chiefs team that can really throw some points on the board. And the same thing is similar with the Chiefs. They do have a few more games where they give up over the 20-point mark, where if both teams are giving up around that, it's going to be one more score to get the over, really. But I think that it's going to be around like the Packers 49ers game score-wise. It's going to be around 24-21. And I think it's going to slightly stick the under. And I think the defense are going to surprise us.
So Jack, you lean under. Lucas, you lean over. Laraib, did you say under?
I took the over. I think, just the amount of offensive weapons that both teams have. In a world that is an interesting Super Bowl, I think the over hits more times than the under does.
Yeah. I am leaning under in this one. I just think that we look back at some of Kyle Shanahan's biggest playoff flops, and as you immediately think of the 28-3 Atlanta Falcons, where they kind of were playing, they weren't relying on the run. They kind of went away with it, and that allowed a Hall of Fame level top tier echelon quarterback to get back into that game. So it's a point of emphasis for him to establish the run. Do not go away with it. Even if the Chiefs jump up to a lead, you saw what happened with Baltimore last week. Stay true to your identity. Stay true to Mahomes or to McCaffrey in this running attack and what you've leaned on all year long, and you should see success in that department. So I think both teams are entering with a strict game plan, and I don't see Kyle Shanahan taking a lot of chances. I don't see, it's the Super Bowl. It's your last game of the year. Lucas, you say go for it, but I feel like these teams are like, I don't want to be the one to lose this game. And maybe there's a little bit of that from Andy Reid where he's like, man, I was in this game last year. I have all this experience of being in, 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. I know exactly what it's like to be in this moment. So I am going to be a little aggressive here and there. But, we'll see how the game script goes. It's going to be very interesting to watch. Let's go ahead and move on to the touchdown scoring props. A lot of interesting stuff. And we start at the top. Christian McCaffrey, minus 230 for anytime touchdown. We obviously saw the impressive, 11, 14 game streak with scoring a touchdown this season, going into the season prior. And, he scored a touchdown in both of these playoff games so far. So, Jack, I want to throw it right back to you. Is there any bigger lock than a McCaffrey touchdown in this Super Bowl?
I think that is a pretty solid lock. However, I just don't know how I feel in a game like this where you might have to throw all the stops when you get to the red zone, mix things up. How much money are you willing to throw on a minus 240 touchdown score? I think he'll get it. I do think it's definitely a great piece and a great bet to sit on, but I think that there's better value in players like KELCE or even a Deebo Samuel that when you have 2 weeks to prepare for a guy like McCaffrey, you're going to be throwing everything at him, and the 49ers and the Chiefs are really going to have to utilize their other options. And I can see it going other ways with this.
Yeah, Lucas, Jack just brought up an interesting point talking about the value of a lot of these guys. Because sure, McCaffrey seems like the sure bet, but at minus 230, that's not spicy enough. This is the damn Super Bowl. So which guys are you looking at? Like, I know this guy. This is his last game of the year. He's finding the pay dirt.
Well, I'd like to comment on what Jack said real quick about, you're right, minus 230 is not a good value, but it's definitely a strong leg if you're trying to cook up a parlay. I think that one stands. He's definitely getting a touchdown. I think are we all in agreement with that here? Or?
It's hard to not see
as much as you can say this team has 2 weeks to game plan for Christian McCaffrey. He is Christian mother effing McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
He has a nose for the end zone, and he'll find it in this game.
Yes, he has a nose for the end zone, but there is another player that has a nose for the end zone in this game, and I want to point towards Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco has come alive in the playoffs more times than I expected in the playoffs. I've seen the Chiefs rely on Pacheco, especially down the stretch in these games. I think I wrote his value down. He's at minus 130 right now for anytime touchdown. Let's say 49ers defense are double teaming KELCE or Rashee Rice or whoever's hot. They're going to look for Pacheco to try to get some easy points on the board. So I do like Pacheco anytime touchdown.
Yeah, Laraib.
Yeah, I got 2 really interesting ones. I think KELCE to score a touchdown at anytime touchdown at plus 100. That's the greatest value I see out of anybody on here. You can tell me Christian McCaffrey is due for a touchdown, and I would argue KELCE is just as much due. And plus 100 odds, that's great to throw in a parlay or just to double your money, just as it stands. And then another one that I really like is Christian McCaffrey to have 2 touchdowns. Now I know, he'll score 1, but 2 at plus 240, I think that's really good value for a guy who this 49ers team is going to lean on, especially in a game as big as this one for Kyle Shanahan. So Christian McCaffrey, 2 tutties.
I like that one as well.
And then what I want to say is maybe not any time, but I think a very interesting one, especially in a game like this, is the first touchdown scored. And from what I've seen from how this Chiefs team likes to attack, especially in these high-stake games, is they throw out all the stops early. They want a lead. They want to be playing with a lead. So to see a guy at Travis KELCE at plus 800 to score the first touchdown in this game, this 49ers defense has had some holes recently and guys finding the middle. We saw Laporta get into the end zone last week. Amon-Ra was, dealing all over that team. They let up some pretty big runs as well. So I think that the 49ers or the Chiefs can stick to a high volume, methodical script, get into the end zone first, put that pressure on Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense. And I think that will lead to some guys on the Chiefs who I think have high value. You mentioned KELCE at any time. I think his first touchdown at plus 800 could be valuable here. And then honestly, what they like to do is find that trick play, find that opening in the defense. They want to get that. They want to get it in early because, sometimes you sit on these plays like, man, if it's the right moment, I want to pull it out. But Andy Reid, what he likes to do in these games is like, I'm going to use this play. I'm going to scheme it up. And a guy like Rashee Rice at plus 1,000 to be the first touchdown scorer, that's pretty interesting to me because if they scheme something up for him to get open 30 yards down the field, hit him in stride to really go, boom, game is on. Here we go, Super Bowl weekend. I think that would be also a very interesting prop to look at for a Chief to score the first touchdown. Any other first touchdown commentary?
I mean, I think if you're going to go for Christian McCaffrey touchdown, if the 49ers get the ball first, I think Christian McCaffrey is really good for first touchdown. And that's another way to get great value out of him. Plus 340 for a first touchdown score. I could see that. And also even just like another anytime. I think when you look at the Chiefs in the past, the last few years, their playoff runs, they really throw the ball to their running backs. So like a surprisingly high amount compared to their regular season. And in the past, we've seen Jerick McKinnon get some really good touches, yards, and even touchdowns in the playoffs. So I could see either Pacheco getting a receiving touchdown early on, or even Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting a anytime plus 550 touchdown. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is on through the air.
Yeah, speaking of long shots, Laraib, did you have any guys maybe like if this guy gets to the seam, he might be able to break one in a game like this? Are there any long shots on your board?
No, I mean the longest long shot I have is Mahomes anytime touchdown at plus 370. I know that's not the greatest value or the biggest prop, but you could definitely see Mahomes. We'll talk about some other props that we like later on, but he definitely loves to use his legs, especially in the Super Bowl. And you could see him, quarterback option, or they get in the red zone, Lewis. Like you mentioned, they have all these trick plays. Andy Reid has, he has the deep bag, you could say. You could definitely see Mahomes sneaking in for one at plus 370.
Yeah, and then another interesting one that I was looking at is, when I talked about Rashee Rice and maybe a explosive play down the field, Marquez Valdes-Scantling at plus 550. If he's been very effective in this playoff, no really big drops, and even that huge catch on third down to kind of ice the game against Baltimore. So maybe if he gets loose, he could potentially score on a 49ers defense that let up a lot of big plays from last week. But let's go ahead and let's move on to some of our favorite props in this game, yards props, receiving, rushing, passing. And I'm going to throw it right back to you, Laraib. We look at the two quarterbacks here, Mahomes, Purdy. Mahomes' line in terms of his passing, 267.5, I believe, 262.5 for his yards. Purdy, 246.5, and both of them 1.5 touchdown. Any juice right there? Do you like any of that?
Definitely Mahomes over 1.5 yards touchdowns. I know Lucas talked about Pacheco and his great rushing ability, but I think in a game of this caliber, it's always going to be on Mahomes' shoulder. And so 1.5 is a great line for that. And then his yards prop at 262, Lewis, 262.5. You think back to last year's Super Bowl where the score was 38-35. Mahomes threw for under 200 yards in that game. Now you can, over 260 in his first two Super Bowls. But in a game like this where, they can control the clock a little bit, run the ball a little bit more, Mahomes might not have to do the Mahomian effort. You think back to the last, the championship game against the Ravens 2 weeks ago, he really didn't have to air that thing out like he usually does. And so maybe under 262 could be a good one.
Yeah, Lucas?
I'd like to also add that if the Chiefs do get down, we are going to see that Mahomian effort. I mean, it's inevitable pretty much. If Chiefs go down, Mahomes is going to have to throw the ball. And I actually do like that line of, what was it, 262?
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, I'm a fan of that one.
Yeah, and then, it's kind of, this goes back to how you think the game is going to play out, Jack. And Another thing that I thought was interesting is the attempts per Mahomes 36.5, Purdy 31.5. Neither of these guys have hit this number this playoffs. Actually, no, excuse me. Purdy did throw 32 times against the Packers, but that was also a very weird script towards the end and a game that they didn't expect to throw that much. Is there anything there that you're looking at, maybe attempts or just back to the yards or touchdowns?
I think with both things, I think Mahomes, I mean, he's gonna do his thing, and he's gonna keep this close no matter what. Even if they're up there, he's gonna, not have to rely on his arm as much. And so he's probably not gonna be getting the yards. So I think no matter what, if one team gets up early and it's not an absolute dogfight where they're going blow for blow, score for score, I think I like both of these guys with unders because I think my vision of this game is that it's going to be a lot more running once you secure some points. You're going to start running the ball and try to bleed it down and make them make a play quick. And then once you get it back, hopefully you can just grind them down and get back into the end zone. And I like under for both their attempts. As I like both of them to run the ball a little bit more. So Purdy with 246, I could see something where he dumps the ball off to Debo and he gets a few huge plays off of that, and where he can make anything happen. He can throw the ball 5 yards down the field, and Debo can get it 60. So I do think that is a little touch and go, but I do like the unders there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, both these defenses have been able to get run on in these playoffs. 49ers got gashed and the Chiefs were living up. We saw the Bills rush for over 180 yards in that playoff game. It was just the mistakes towards the end that killed the Bills. So there's a script to beat this Chiefs defense, which has been super reliable all season long, very underrated. And you think about these two coaches, we need to keep that high-powered offense on the sideline. They're both thinking that because both these offenses can just make plays out of nowhere. So I agree with you. I think this is a conservative game plan, lean on the run heavy, and when it comes down to third down situations, hit the sticks, keep the drives going, keep that other offense off the field because of the respect that they're going to have for both sides of the ball. So my favorite prop in this entire game, and we'll get into some more of these in a second, is I really like Brock Purdy under on 31.5. He's only done it 4 times all season, including that Green Bay game. And I really feel like if this game is nip and tuck, I don't know how much trust Shanahan is going to have in Purdy to lead some sort of comeback coming down, but that is a prop that I'm very interested in, and I will be putting some cheddar cheese on, if you know what I mean. But let's get into some player props. Some of the guys, a ton of stars on both teams. Lucas, I want to start with you. Who are some guys you like at what value?
All right, so I don't have any, I guess, high ball bets. These are all just they're going. You put $5 in, you get about $5 back, right? Something quick, something to line your pockets.
Right.
So my first one, I have Mahomes over 4.5 rushing attempts. His line is at 4.5. You're getting that at minus 122 value. I have it written on my board. That's why I keep looking that way. But you're getting some good value there. We've seen this Chiefs offense struggle, especially against the Ravens. I think at one point in the fourth quarter, they were sitting at like 67 total yards of offense or something like that. The wheels fell off of that offense in the second half of that Ravens game. So I'm expecting Patrick Mahomes to use his legs a little bit, get some rushing attempts in. We've seen the skills players on the Chiefs kind of falter throughout the season. If something like that happens in the Super Bowl, I trust Mahomes to get 5 rushing attempts.
Yeah, Lucas, and
Laraib?
I just want to piggyback right off of that. Patrick Mahomes in all of his Super Bowls has gone over 29 rushing yards, and his line right now is sitting at 25.5. And we've seen it before. You think about years past, you just have these huge runs where, everything's collapsing, no one's open down the field, and he just takes it by himself and gets an easy 20 yards, 15 yards. And I can definitely see him doing that in this sort of game where you have guys like Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa coming off the edge, and he just takes it right up the middle for a huge gain. And then on the other side, I also like Purdy sitting at 12.5. he had a huge effort against the Lions last week, and especially against this Chiefs defense that likes to blitz, as a top 5 blitzing team, you can definitely see a pocket collapse and just a hole open up for him to take the yard at least 13 yards in this game. So both quarterbacks rushing, I really like.
Yeah, there is an interesting prop actually on FanDuel at plus 140. Both quarterbacks to combine for 50 rushing yards. And you think of these high stake games, both these quarterbacks like using their legs, extend the plays. This is it. You leave everything on the table. Who cares about how your body feels the next day? You have a whole off season to recuperate. So this does feel like a good prop. Maybe a little bit of a chump bet, but at the value plus money, it's not bad to throw like quarter unit on something like that. Jack, any other props that you've been looking at?
So there's two that I really like, and I really like Pacheco over on attempts at 15.5. So far in the playoffs, he's had 2 games with 24 carries. The other game where he didn't quite hit that mark, he had 15, and that was against the Bills. And so far this season, he's been sitting around that 15, 16 mark, so it could be, it's a little iffy. It's a great line. I think it's pretty accurate for where he's been all season, but I do think that he's going to maintain at least some of that steam that he's got throughout the playoffs and hit the over there. Also, I like Christian McCaffrey under 130.5 receiving and rushing yards combined. He doesn't really hit that line too many times, and when he does, he barely scrapes over that, and he's having massive games for that. I don't think he's going to have a bad game by any means. I think he's going to have a fantastic game. He could even get 3 touchdowns for all I know, but I don't think even with that, he might not even get close to that line within maybe even 20 yards. He'd have to get at least 100 yards rushing and then have to scrape together another 30 plus yards receiving. That's pretty hard to do, and I don't think he's going to be able to make it.
Yeah, some props that I've really been interested in. I agree with you that 130 line is a lot, but in terms of just 91.5 on the rushing yards line, I think they're going to stick to the script. Maybe it's less passing and maybe he doesn't hit that number that you're talking about, but I expect a big workload for him. And against this Chiefs defense, if Shanahan stays disciplined to running the ball, which, we'll see if that's the case. Because, quarterbacks and offensive coordinators look at Mahomes on the other sideline and they say, we need to score. But when you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who 21-6 since he's been there in San Francisco, just an absolute monster at 91.5. I think he goes for triple digits in this game rushing, and he has his imprint on this game and maybe a Super Bowl MVP, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Did y'all have any other props that really excited y'all in terms of this game?
I have one last one at Travis Kelce's line at 71.5 receiving yards. I think his averages he's averaged more than 71 yards the last 4 seasons in the playoffs. This is going to be a huge game for the Chiefs. Their offense runs through him. You could say he's had a down year in the regular season, but he's really shown up in these playoffs. And I think 71.5 is a great line for Travis Kelce. And you parlay that with an anytime touchdown, and you're looking at a really good, chunk of change right there.
So I actually kind of wanted to get to that. In terms of some parlay action, what we could get to get some value. If you think the game is going to go a certain way, let's say you you think the Chiefs are going to get a lead, they're going to run the ball, and they're going to win that way, you could go Pacheco over 67.5 plus Chiefs money line, and you're looking at a plus, 3-1 odds right there. So that's something interesting to think about. But are there any other combos like that you might be looking at, Jack?
I think both running backs, you're looking pretty good if you take money line and then rushing yards. But maybe for Christian McCaffrey, if you're a little scared of that 91, which I do think he'll hit, I think you can drop it down a little bit, maybe go 75 rushing yards, and them to get the win, you're going to boost your lineup a little bit. One thing I like that's a little bit of a boost, although it's still just one player, is I take Marquez Valdes-Scantling and I boost him. His line's at 19.5 at minus 120, but you can boost him up to 25 yards and get it up to plus 118. I feel like if he's going to get his yards, he's going to be right around that line. And it's not that many more for him to get. And I think that it could be another situation where they're not looking for him on defense and they can secure a game with that. If the game goes that way, I think he's a great line to look at.
Yeah, and that's kind of seems like a bet where it's if he's going to really impact the game at all, because if he gets those catches. He's not a guy who's getting a bunch of 10-yard ends and things like that. If they're looking at MVS, they're looking at him down the field for big chunks. So if you think he hits one of those, then he hits the overs. So that is something interesting to think about. Anything else, Laraib, Lucas?
Yeah, I got one. I also like what Laraib say? He wanted over on KELCE receiving yards or
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like his over on receptions as well, staying at 6.5. KELCE, grizzled veteran, him and Mahomes have the chemistry. I could see game flow favoring him catching a ton of balls this game. And on top of that, he's trying to impress his shiny new girlfriend and Taylor Swift.
What was the over-under on Taylor Swift being mentioned in this podcast? I'd like to see that. Speaking of, let's go ahead and get some of the prop bets for this game. A lot of interesting stuff. Starting at, most important thing, dictates how every single game goes. The coin flip, sitting here -110 both ways. Tails has hit. It's almost a dead even split both ways, but I've always been a heads guy. I think you're a heads up in this type of game. I'm always going heads in this spot.
Well, I'm a tails never fails guy, and so I'm really leaning towards tails.
Okay. I mean, that's a huge prop right there. Going on to another fun one, Jack. Miss Reba McEntire, country pop star, known for her amazing vocals, and she likes to embellish. She's a showman, one of the lowest over-unders on a national anthem we've ever seen at only 1:20. We saw last year, I forgot who sang it, but they skied over the 1:40 mark. So is Reba going over?
I think she's got to go over. Maybe the NFL wants a little bit quicker of a national anthem. Maybe they said something to her before, and that's why the line's so low. But I think if she's gonna show off, this is her time to shine. Obviously, she's got a great career, but if you're in the Super Bowl, you're singing your heart out, and you're gonna go over there, especially if it's gonna be the lowest in a long time. I think that's a lot.
Yeah, and on that same note, when it's your time to shine, Super Bowl, all eyes are on you. Lucas, we have Usher performing at halftime this year. Large lexicon of hits. He's been the man for a while now. What song is he coming out to?
Dude, I couldn't even name you an Usher song.
Dude!
Something.
We're looking at Yeah with Ludacris. That's one of the, DJ's Got Us Falling in Love. I mean, I'm totally not looking up Usher's songs as we speak right now. But yeah, Hey Daddy, My Boo. We're just talking about the classics here. And if you're asking an Usher super fan like myself, I think that DJ's Got Us Falling in Love as a dark horse, get it going, have the kids singing the Minecraft remix. That's how you start a Super Bowl right there.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Yeah is one of his biggest hits. But do you see him coming out of the gate with that? That's one of the more the things you hear, like, you mix it in and then you hear it towards the middle, right? Or towards the end, or the last one that really hypes you up. So yeah, as maybe not the first one, but maybe the last one, I think could be interesting.
I think those two are going to be there first and last. Usually they start off strong and they end strong. And I think DJ God's Fallen in Love is a great option for a song to open up with, but I think might have enough pump to it to get the thing started, and he might need that momentum to keep him going through the rest of it.
And we've seen a lot of, halftime performers bring out other artists, guys they've done features with. One a lot of people are throwing out is Pitbull. We've seen Pitbull at the Super Bowl before. Any other people we think might get on the Super Bowl, hop on with Usher?
Ludacris is definitely one that you could see, like you mentioned, his hit single with Yeah. Pitbull, like you just mentioned, and then maybe a little Christina Aguilera action. She's been AWOL for a little while, so maybe this is her time to shine here at the Super Bowl.
Maybe bring in some K-pop with some Jungkook out there. A lot of people, K-pop fans online, are theorizing they might get some representation in the Super Bowl. Sure wouldn't surprise me. Finally, one of the props, it's always the most interesting. Super Bowl winning coach, unexpected. Gatorade gets dumped on him at the end. I'm looking at some of these colors, two red teams. The theme of this year has been red and purple for the Super Bowl logo. What colors are we looking at here, Lucas? I gave you some of the odds. Purple is the favorite here, which kind of surprised me. You have a good theory on why it's not a certain color. So what do you think is going to go down?
Well, I don't think it's yellow. I'll say that. Doesn't
Yeah,
look good
no,
on TV, right? But
not flashy.
I think purple and red, the juxtaposition there. I could see purple getting dumped. Is that the favorite?
That is the favorite, plus 220 on BetMGM.
I mean, like, how the hell are we supposed to know? So I'm just gonna go with purple, to be honest with you.
Well, my buddy works for the equipment team of blah blah blah, and he told me. Nah, I remember Jack. I think Peter had a story about that in the past. How his boys got the inside information. That's just something you shouldn't be able to bet on. That's my hot take. But for
Yeah,
the
how
love
did
of the
the
game,
NFL get here?
I'm saying orange. That's just what my gut is telling me, Laraib.
And I have to agree, obviously red won't be there because of the red 40 in the die. Thank you, Lucas. But I think orange is the next best color for the winning team, for the 49ers and for the Chiefs. I think orange is a nice one. Also, don't sleep on blue as a nice underdog. I know a lot of players love that blue flavor, and so that could be a sneaky one.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I believe that purple was the color last year. So that's why I don't think it's going to be purple this year. People are all in for it. And, the logo for the Super Bowl this year are red and purple. I don't think it's going to be red. I don't think they're going to dump red on a red coach, two regular teams. I think that's just a little bit too obvious. And purple, I think, as same as last year, I think it's going to mix it up. The only way that they're getting purple is if purple's the only one that they didn't drink. And I can see that as an option, but I think it is probably going to be blue or I think it might even be lime green, but I think
Lime green is out of left field, Jack.
I think my pick is blue, but I wouldn't be surprised by a lime green dump.
Well, I'm
You gonna put your
glad that
money
we
where
got
your mouth is?
those. Wait, what, Lucas?
You gonna put your money where your mouth is?
I'll put $1 on it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's the
Your
Super
buck.
Bowl. We're going all out. And finally, one of the biggest props is who's coming home with Super Bowl MVP. Every Mahomes win, he's won the MVP in both years. So you could argue in the first Super Bowl against the 49ers, maybe Darrell Williams deserved it the way he impacted that game. But Mahomes is the favorite, plus 140, followed by Brock Purdy, plus 200, McCaffrey, plus 440, KELCE as a great story, MVP. You got the girl in the stands, plus 1,700. Laraib, is it simple? Winning quarterbacks, winning MVP?
I really feel like when the 49ers win the Super Bowl, Christian McCaffrey and his 2 touchdown performance, just his MVP performance he's had this year, the entire NFL has been clamoring for this guy to win regular season MVP because of the performance he had. I think a lot of his teammates are going to vote him for Super Bowl MVP if they win this one. I really like his value.
Yeah, Lucas?
I think if the 49ers win, it's got to be McCaffrey. I mean, he's the blood and bones of that team. Give me McCaffrey.
Yeah, and then I want to say there's been guys in the past, obviously, Laraib, you know this well. Guys can come out of nowhere and win it. Shout out Malcolm Smith, circa 2013. Definitely one of the more shocking ones, but it's been pretty consistent recently with the quarterback. Is that where you're leaning here, Jack? Or are there any guys maybe off the radar we should be looking at?
I think for the 49ers, there's just too much talent on there for Purdy to win it. Purdy would have to really put up a great performance and actually spread it out super evenly in order for one of the other guys not to snag it away from him. It could be a defensive guy, but I feel like there would have to be something miraculous that happens in this situation, or really just a absolute collapse by both offenses. But I think both these teams are gonna be trying not to lose after, I would say, in the championship games, both of the other teams that lost it. The other teams, the Chiefs and the 49ers, did not win those games to me. I feel like the other teams lost, and I feel like they might try to avoid that a little bit more, but I think it's going to be someone else. I think for Tom Brady, when he won his third Super Bowl, he didn't win MVP. Someone else got it. And is this Mahomes' potential third Super Bowl win?
Correct.
I think that this is time for him to, if he wins the game, he's going to have to pass that torch on to what I think would be Travis KELCE. I think if they're going to get it, it's going to be a lot of dumping it off to KELCE. He's going to get a bunch of catches, but I think it's going to be Christian McCaffrey.
I would counter your point with just saying that because there's so much talent, if on the 49ers, you could say if Purdy spreads it out a bunch, who only one person will end up with the credit, and that's him. He's the distributor. Everyone else contributes to him. So if George Kittle gets a touchdown, if Ayuk gets a touchdown, Debo, if he's spreading it out a bunch, then ultimately he gets the credit. But I feel like a lot of what the 49ers do is they attack weaknesses and they lean on a guy in a matchup. So you could see a potential Debo Samuel plus 2,500. There's been multiple games this year where it's like, you just throw your hands up. Debo is the best player on the field. So that's an interesting one to look at. But I want to bring it back home with Travis KELCE here, because if we're looking at a 2-touchdown performance from Mahomes, both of them to Travis. Travis has 8 catches, maybe a huge third down conversion on the last drive. And then you bring in all the surroundings. You know, maybe you get a nice Super Bowl ring on the field. I don't know, plus 1,700. That feels pretty good to me. I mean, obviously, if you think either team's going to win, if you think the Chiefs are going to win, your best bet, I think we can all agree, would be Mahomes. If you think the 49ers are going to win, I feel like we agree the best bet would be McCaffrey, just because of like what you mentioned, Laraib. He's been their guy all season long. A lot of people attribute him as being the MVP favorite for this team, so he would get a lot of the recognition. But maybe a guy like a Kittle or a Debo could be a dark horse for that. I don't see any defensive player winning this. Maybe a Pacheco game if that's how it goes, but a lot of interesting stuff right there. Me personally, don't overthink it. I think Mahomes will win MVP if the Chiefs win. Is that who I'm picking? We shall see. But before we head out of here, me and Laraib, we're going to be giving our picks on Friday in our last episode before the Super Bowl. So while we have you two here, Lucas, I want to start with you. Who you got winning? What's your final score? How's it going to happen?
Give me Chiefs 28, 49ers 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack?
I think this is going to be, as I said earlier, I think it's going to be a close game, but I think you're going to sneak and get the under. So I think it might be somewhere around 24-17, and the 49ers are going to win this thing.
Okay. A lot of interesting stuff to discuss. Again, thank you guys for joining us.
I got one more thing, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gronk is going to make the kick of destiny this year.
He's going to make it. He is going to
He's
make
gonna make
it.
He better make it.
If those sleazy dirtbags at FanDuel have him miss, I'm not done. But you know what I mean. I'll be very upset.
I don't know. I did see a clip of him kicking field goals with other things. Obviously, they weren't footballs. They were just putting whatever down. I think it was maybe even Jimmy Fallon, and he couldn't kick anything straight. So he better whip into shape before that. But
that's what they want you to see. That's what they want you to see, Jack.
I think he's gonna.
He can't miss twice in a row. He can't.
No,
he can't do that.
It's a short kick.
All right, so it seems like that will be it for today's episode. Again, thank you guys for coming on. We just sold y'all so much game for free. So make sure y'all like and comment on this video. But again, thank you too for coming on, all this stuff. We're super excited. We'll be back with 2 more guests on Thursday to break down some storylines, some big picture stuff following this game. Laraib, anything you want to say before we head out of here?
Before we go, I have one last long shot from the First and Goal Pod special right here. Trent McDuffie to record a sack at plus 630. Trent McDuffie has been a huge component of our podcast this year, and we know this Chiefs defense likes to blitz, so Trent McDuffie to have a sack at any time.
I love it. Crazy aura. We love him on our pod.
All right, but with that, I think that's the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.